Welcome back to Rise and Rouse. I'm your host, Erin Allgood, social impact strategist, consultant, and someone who has been dealing with a lot of grief lately. On today's episode, I share a couple of ways in which I've been grieving lately. I share a little bit about my thoughts around the most recent election, as well as my own recent 40th birthday a few months ago, and the grieving I have been doing around the anniversary of my sister's death. I want to give a trigger warning for anyone. If you are feeling a lot of sensitivity around grief and loss, this might not be the episode for you, because it is a little bit more emotional than some of the other ones that we've shared. So take care of yourself. Don't listen if it's not the right thing for you right now. Maybe come back to it at a later time, or try to read the transcript, because that might feel a little bit less intense compared to listening to the podcast itself. I hope you will join me on this journey through grief and exploration. And please share your thoughts with me. Please reach out, send emails, let me know how the episode is impacting you and how you're feeling about it. Any reflections that you might have. I really, really encourage you to reach out, because I love getting emails, and I know I'm not always the best at replying in a timely manner, but please know that I'm seeing the emails and we'll get back to you soon. Last thing that I want to share with you all is that this is actually the last episode of 2024 and of season 3. I'm going to be coming back with a new twist on the podcast in 2025, and I can't wait to tell you all about that. One thing that I'll say, just to give you a little peek behind the curtain, is that I'll be taking the podcast on the road. My partner and I have an epic road trip planned for next year, and we're going to interview folks along the way. Feels really exciting for me to be able to take the podcast with me and to be able to introduce you to more people who are doing amazing things throughout the country. And as we start to have more plans actually in place, I'll share that out with you all through the Rise and Rouse blog on Substack, so that you can feel free to introduce me to people that might be in the places that we're going to be visiting. Stay tuned for more information on that, but we're really excited about it. It's going to be a great time. With that, I hope you enjoy this episode and that you have really, really restful and rejuvenating holidays, holiday celebrations, and time with your friends and loved ones. And I'll see you in 2025. I wanted to take a moment to really just step in and start processing some of this with all of you who are listening. I've talked about the election and the aftermath in conversation with Emerald, my business partner in the Liberation Nexus Lab. So if you haven't seen that, go pop over to the Liberation Nexus Lab Substack and take a listen. I have been feeling just real profound grief coming out of the election. And that grief is mixed with rage and fear, and a couple of different other emotions. It feels fairly complex. But the day after the election, I woke up and went for a walk. Around my town, something I do quite often, but I haven't been doing as much in the mornings anymore. I ended up coming across this woman who was walking these 2 dogs. One of them was a 3-legged dog, and they came right over to me and started sniffing me, trying to get some attention from me. And of course, as I was petting them, I just started bawling. I was just so affected in that moment, and just so touched, because I think those animals knew that I needed a little bit of love and care in that moment. And so I walked away just crying and crying all the way back to my house. And there's a lot of different reasons for why I'm feeling grief. Part of it is the grief of being a woman in this country and knowing that people would rather put a racist, misogynist, just monster in office than choose a woman who is more than qualified for the position. There was grief that we even had this choice. I was not a big fan of Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, because I really disagree with a lot of her stances, especially what she has been doing in the continuation of sending weapons and money to Israel and the continued genocide in Gaza. And I have really disliked a lot of her climate policies. I have disliked a number of different policies that she's put forth. Despite that, I still voted because I felt that with her in office, we would have at least had we being the collective activist community, would have a chance at being able to gain some traction and fight her administration. I don't have as much hope in terms of what's going to come with Trump's administration. Things are going to be a lot different than what even I had cautiously hoped for. And so there is just this tremendous soul-sucking grief that I feel around that this is, that I am continually reminded within our society the roles that women are relegated to and the uphill battle that we face in trying to be able to create any kind of upward momentum, any kind of progress, any kind of change. We keep kind of seeing ourselves pushed aside and in favor of the most mediocre of mediocre white men taking our place. So there's that deep well of grief and rage, sadness that I've been experiencing over the last couple of weeks. I've basically cried every single day since the election. I cannot watch anything. Not sure what it is, but if anybody has seen Agatha All Along and has seen the Ballad of the Witches Road, which is amazing, highly, highly, highly recommend. It is queer. It is amazing. It is like all of these women at all various different ages. Very few men in that show. It's fantastic in so many different ways. But every time I hear that song now, I just start crying too, because, and I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure why. Not sure why it's that song in particular, but I think it feels powerful in a way that I probably have not felt able to access in a really, really long time. So I keep turning to it every time it like pops up on my Instagram feed in some way or another. I just start getting tearful. My partner is really not quite sure what to do with me in some ways when that happens. But that being said, this is all similarly, kind of all coming concurrently at the same time, as I said, like of a couple of other milestones within my life. My sister's Angel Day is November 13th. I'd really hoped to be able to put out this episode on that day, and that wasn't going to happen. There was too much really swirling at that point for me to be able to kind of sit down and put my thoughts into words. And also my 40th birthday was about a month ago as well, too. And my 40th birthday was so interesting. It's in October. So I remember waking up that day similarly and feeling this tremendous, tremendous grief. And I ended up spending the first half of the day crying. And my partner, I had taken the day off. My partner was not quite sure what the heck was going on as well, too. And like the fall has been a time for me that is always associated with grief since I was a teenager. My sister's birthday is September 20th. And if you saw my post on my wedding celebration, I hosted that the day after my sister's birthday. And it felt like a really, really important thing for me to be able to kind of reclaim that time for something joyful. And I'm really glad I did. And so every single year we kind of hit September timeframe, and I start feeling sad and a little bit just mopey, I think, is part of it. I think that's my grief just kind of coming back every time the seasons start to change again. And even though I love the fall, I love the changing of the leaves. I love so many aspects of the fall. It is a really, really hard time for me at the same time. My birthday that morning, I think that really what was going through my mind was that it was another milestone without my sister. And granted, she's been gone for 24 years at this point. This isn't something new for me. But as we all know, grief isn't linear. It comes back in full force when I least expect it sometimes. And of course, like, I know other people probably relate to this in so many ways, right? Like, grief is just a motherfucker. Grief is just hard. It's unpredictable. And also, it is such a powerful reminder of how much love just transcends time and space and even this earthly plane. And it's a reminder for me. It's a reminder to cherish what I did love about her, still do love about her. Reminder to cherish the time I have with the loved ones that I have. To say I love you every single day to everybody. My poor little sister, the one that lives with me right now. Every time she walks out of the room, I tell her that I love her. I think that she thinks that I'm crazy. And that's okay. Perfectly happy. Perfectly happy to have her feel that way. She will never, ever question that I love her, though. Same with my other little sister as well, too. Tell her I love her all the time. And she will never, ever question that I love her, because I show it as much as I possibly can through the actions, through the words that I say. I know how precious it is to have these people in my life. With that being said, it hasn't been an easy road. And I think that showed up really in full force on my birthday when I just couldn't get out of my own way. It's not that I was just grieving my sister, I think, and the fact that she wasn't there for those milestones. I was also just grieving a new chapter, if that makes sense. Kind of like reconciling with the fact that this past chapter of my life is over. My 30s were so rich and full and amazing in so many ways. I traveled a lot. I visited a lot of really cool places. I got to fall in love again in my 30s, which was pretty amazing. And I was able to go start another business, grow my existing business that I had started 10 plus years ago. And I have arrived at a level of professional success that is amazing. I have arrived at a level of personal success that is amazing too. I have such an amazing life, such an amazing group of friends, such an amazing partner, such a rich family life. I feel so, so lucky to be in this position. I'm so glad that I had all of that in my 30s and that I arrived where I am now. And also, I went through hell in my 30s, saw and lived through the dissolution of my marriage and kind of a reconciling that chapter of my life was over. And my ex and I had been together on and off, certainly, but like since we were 15, we knew each other so, so well. And there came a point in my 30s, when we decided to split, where I had to realize and recognize that I needed to love myself more, regardless of whether or not somebody else would ever love me again. It was a huge, huge leap to take. It brought so much destruction in my life. It brought so much instability, especially financial instability. It brought so many challenges along with it, like learning to trust somebody again, trying to like navigate all of my baggage that I had, and really trying to rebuild myself now with a completely blank slate. I had so many options, so many directions I could have gone in my life at that moment in time, because really and truly, there was no path laid before me. I'm so grateful for the path I chose. And also, to an extent, grieving some of the paths I didn't take. And not that those doors are closed by any means now, but it does mean that I did make a commitment to a certain direction. And so some of those lives that could have been are gone, or would take a lot to shift and change and to be able to go back to those again, to be able to get on track in those directions. Something else that had kind of come up for me over this last year or so as well too is one of my best friends who I've known since I was 6 years old. Her mother passed away last year, and I have seen her through that grief over the last year plus at this point. And it also threw me for such a loop going through all of that too. Of course, I knew her mother growing up, and so I was sad and grieving the loss of her mother. And I also had this kind of moment of reckoning with myself too. I started to realize my friend being, the age that we were, like 38, 39 timeframe, was around the same age when my mother lost her mother. And my mother also lost my sister, as well as gave birth to another child, all within the same year. And so coming upon my 40th birthday, it really fucked with my head to realize that my mother had gone through such a tremendous amount of loss, and I hadn't really understood it at that point. And then it also flipped me out, thinking about potentially the loss of my mother too. And so this whole kind of like my relationship with death has been kind of shaken up in so many ways and has been renewed. Like it can't be ignored at this point. It continues to kind of show up in my life in these patterns and in these ways, kind of reminding me I haven't resolved things and that it is really, really important for me to start to do that and to put some work in that and towards that. The thing I know the most about the future for myself is that in order for me to really be able to grow and evolve as a person, I need to take a look at my past. I need to take a look at some of the things that I'm carrying with me that I don't even recognize anymore, because it shapes how I show up in every single day, in every single interaction I have, in the way that I carry myself and how I move through the world. I oftentimes end these episodes, especially when I'm doing interviews, with this idea of like, what does it mean to give a damn? And I started the podcast with this idea in mind that I needed to be sitting across from someone having conversations that mattered, that would inspire people, that would help people to see how they could be change makers within their lives, that they could feel energized and ready to take on the world, because I was feeling so little of that in my day-to-day life before I started the podcast. I knew that it was so important to bring those stories to all of you. But what also happened is that I was real good at not turning that lens back on myself. Like, these solo episodes have allowed me to talk to you all in my messiness, in my struggles, talk about my love, my loss with all of you, and to be able to give you some insight into my work, which I love talking about. But also there's so much underneath all of that that feels really important to acknowledge and to give you insight into all of that as well. The Grace Lee Boggs quote that I started this whole series off with, this whole podcast with, is transform yourself to transform the world. And I so believe that that is the key to being able to do really good work in the world, is really to be able to take that real hard look at our internal state of mind, our internal, biases, conditions, and be able to really be raw and real with all of that so that we can show up more whole to the world, more whole to our lives. But I also want to just emphasize that, like, doing your own healing work isn't just about serving the world. It's about doing it so you can feel whole, not about being in service to others necessarily. I think that's an important component of it, but I don't think that should always be the driving factor. It's not about productivity. It's not about how you can show up and continue to make change. Like, it's not rooted in this capitalistic bullshit. It is really and truly about how can you live your best life. And you can't live your best life with all this baggage. There really is just no one way to give a damn, right? Like, we hear that every time I have an interview, and we hear the answers that people give. I love hearing all the different ways that people continue to show up with their most fiercest love, care, and a conviction that it's worth fighting for another day, right? To continue to get up and do good in the world for yourself, for your community, for others. And that's why I think I wanted to talk to you about this today, is that moving through my grief, I know I'm not alone. Moving through my grief is how I'll be able to take back some power that I feel has been lost in some way. And I hope you feel that as well, too. I hope that you give yourself that space for grief, whatever grief you need to process, whatever grief you need to acknowledge in your life, with kindness, with care, with love. Don't avoid it. Don't be me for 24 years. Like, look it head on. Because that's what we need. That's what we need in order to be able to move through this world, especially over the next 4 years, especially over the next decade. We need one another, and we need ourselves to have our heads on straight. So thank you so much for listening to me today. This is was a little bit new for me to be quite so raw with you all. But I hope it sparks something for all of you. It's been such a joy to do this, and just know that we have one more episode coming out for this season, and then we have some really, really exciting things that are going to be happening next season. And I can't wait to tell you about all of that. So thank you just so very, very much. And whenever you're listening to this, I hope your holiday season is amazing. I hope you get to eat all the delicious sweets that you possibly can. I know I will be. And I hope that your new year looks beautiful and bright. So thank you so much.